Please, just for a moment, close your eyes. Try to remember a specific sound from your childhood. Perhaps it is the rhythmic clatter of wooden blocks echoing through a dark winter street, or maybe the faint, earthy smell of a green mosquito coil burning on a humid summer night. Welcome back, old friend. Today, we are taking a deeply nostalgic journey into the 1970s and 80s, to an era that feels like a completely different world. We are going to revisit 20 everyday things we did back then that were entirely normal to us, but would probably shock people today. By the end of our journey, we will remember a very special evening ritual that might just bring a tear to your eye. So, make yourself a warm cup of tea, settle into a comfortable chair, and let us travel back to a time when life was a little simpler. Time seemed to flow differently back then, did it not? It was a slower, more deliberate kind of time. We did not have the entire world rushing at us through a glowing screen in our pockets. Instead, we had the quiet beauty of anticipation. We had to wait for letters to arrive, wait for our favorite television shows to broadcast on a Sunday evening, and wait by the public telephone for a loved one to call. Modern society often tells us that without our current technology, we were somehow poorer or disconnected. But you and I know the truth. We know that our lives were incredibly rich with genuine human connection. Every inconvenience was actually an opportunity to interact with our neighbors, to trust our community, and to experience the world with our own two hands. The things we did might seem absurd or even dangerous to the youth of today, but they were the very things that built our character and tied us together. Let us begin with a sound that has completely vanished from our modern streets. The heavy metallic clink of a 10-yen coin dropping into the slot of a bright red public telephone. In the 1970s, these red rotary dial phones, known affectionately to all of us as the aka denwa, were the vital lifelines of our neighborhoods. They usually sat outside the local tobacco shop, resting on a small wooden stand that offered absolutely no shelter from the rain or wind. If you needed to make a call, you had to stand right there on the sidewalk, exposed to the elements, while the entire street inadvertently listened to your conversation. The receiver itself was heavy in your hand, made of thick, cold plastic that always smelled faintly of the metallic polish the shop owner used. You would carefully dial each number, listening to the satisfying rhythmic whir of the rotary dial spinning back into its resting place. There was no privacy, no caller identification, and no voice messaging. If the person did not answer, the phone would ring endlessly in an empty house, and your 10-yen coin would drop down into the return slot with a hollow thud. We valued our words much more back then, simply because every minute cost us a precious coin. Today, the idea of sharing a single exposed public telephone with your entire neighborhood seems utterly absurd. But back then, it taught us patience and the true value of hearing a loved one's voice. And now, let us think about the day that brought a unique kind of joy to every household: payday. Before the invisible digital bank transfers of today, receiving your salary was a deeply physical and significant ritual. The husband would come home from the office carrying a thick, heavy brown paper envelope known as the Kyuryo Bukuro. Inside was his entire monthly salary, paid out in crisp, physical cash. The ritual was almost sacred. He would hand this heavy envelope directly to his wife, who managed the household finances, often with a slight bow of mutual respect. You could literally feel the weight of a month of hard work in your hands. The smell of those freshly printed paper notes, mixed with the scent of the thick paper envelope, was the smell of security and survival. The wife would then use her personal wooden seal to stamp the receipt. Today, carrying that much physical cash through the busy evening streets seems like a terrifying and absurd security risk. People would be completely shocked by the danger. But back then, it was just the way things were done. That physical exchange of the heavy envelope fostered a profound sense of partnership and shared responsibility within the family that a silent digital notification simply cannot replicate. Let us recall an atmosphere that would leave modern society absolutely speechless. the ever-present thick blue cloud of tobacco smoke that seemed to cover the entire country. In the 1970s, smoking was not just accepted, it was everywhere. You could smoke on the commuter trains, on aeroplanes, in movie theaters, and incredibly, even in hospital waiting rooms. The train cars were equipped with tiny, built-in tin ashtrays by every single seat. When you boarded a long-distance train, the air would instantly hit you with the strong, distinctive smell of popular domestic cigarettes, mixed with the scent of damp wool suits and pomade. Ash would occasionally drift through the air and land on your lap. Even if you did not smoke, your clothes and your hair would carry that heavy scent long after you arrived at your destination. Today, the idea of lighting up a cigarette in a crowded airplane cabin or a hospital corridor is completely illegal and unpleasant. It seems utterly absurd that we all just accepted it as a normal part of daily life. But in those days, it was simply the backdrop of our adulthood, a hazy, smoky filter through which we watched the rapid economic miracle of our country unfold. Let us wander back to the local train stations to remember a rhythm that defined our daily commutes. Before the silent tap of modern plastic cards, there was the unforgettable, rapid-fire sound of the station attendants punching tickets at the gate. As you approached the wooden turnstiles, you would hear that metallic chaka-chaka-chaka sound echoing through the concourse. The attendants stood in their immaculate uniforms, their hands moving with the speed and precision of a master musician. They would take your small, stiff cardboard ticket, punch a tiny hole in it, and hand it back in the blink of an eye, never once breaking the flow of the massive morning crowds. The floor around them would be dusted with thousands of tiny paper circles, like confetti, celebrating another day of hard work. The smell of ozone from the trains mixed with the scent of those little paper tickets. Today, having human beings manually punch thousands of tickets an hour seems absurd and impossibly inefficient. But back then, that brief eye contact, that human touch at the start and end of your long day, made you feel like you were part of a living, breathing community. You were never just an anonymous number passing through a silent machine. Let us take a ride in the family car for a moment and remember a practice that would make modern parents faint from anxiety. Think back to those long family drives on a Sunday afternoon. Where did the children sleep? Not securely strapped into heavily engineered car seats. No, we loved to climb over the back seat and lie down flat on the rear window deck of the car. There were absolutely no seat belts for us back there. We would lay on our backs, feeling the warm vinyl that had been baking in the sun, and watch the streetlights pass by overhead like shooting stars. The glass of the rear window was cool against our foreheads as we watched the cars behind us. If the driver braked suddenly, we would simply slide forward. Today, allowing a child to sleep completely unrestrained in the back window of a moving vehicle is considered a shocking, absurd safety violation. It is completely illegal. But back then, we felt so incredibly safe, cradled in the back of that steel machine, trusting our fathers completely as we drifted off to sleep to the low hum of the engine and the smell of exhaust fumes and synthetic leather. Let us walk through the gates of our old elementary schools and remember a chore that was both thrilling and intensely dangerous. Every school, and even many private backyards, had a concrete incinerator known as a shokyakuro. Burning the daily trash was a completely normal part of our routine. As children, we were often tasked with carrying heavy baskets of paper waste out to the incinerator, lighting the fire, and using a long iron poker to stir the burning rubbish. In the crisp autumn air, the entire neighborhood would smell of wood smoke and burning paper. We would stand incredibly close to the open flames, our faces flushed with the intense heat, watching the black ash float up into the sky like dark snow. Sometimes, we would even toss sweet potatoes wrapped in foil into the dying embers. Today, allowing young children to manage an open, blazing incinerator on school grounds is totally absurd. The environmental and safety regulations of today would never permit such a thing. But back then, tending to the fire taught us responsibility, respect for dangerous elements, and gave us a unique sense of independence that modern, sanitized school environments rarely provide. Now, let us remember how we spent our precious summer mornings. When summer vacation arrived, we were not allowed to sleep in. Instead, we participated in a mandatory neighborhood ritual that modern kids might find completely exhausting. We woke up at 6:30 in the morning, grabbed our small paper stamp cards attached to a string around our necks, and walked to the local park for radio Taiso. The grass would still be wet with cold morning dew, and the air smelled fresh and clean. The cheerful piano music and the energetic voice of the instructor would broadcast from a portable radio, and dozens of sleepy children and elderly neighbors would stretch in unison. If you attended, the local community leader would stamp your card. We guarded those cards with our lives, because a full card meant a prize at the end of the summer, usually some pencils or a notebook. Today, forcing entire neighborhoods of children to wake up at dawn during their vacation to do synchronized stretching sounds absurdly strict. But that daily routine gave our wild summers a beautiful structure, and it bonded us with the neighbors we stretched beside every single morning. Let us take the elevator to the very top floor of the local department store. In the 1970s, the roof was not an empty space for air conditioning units. It was a magical world known as the Okujo Yuenchi, the rooftop amusement park. For a child, this was the ultimate weekend destination. After the mother finished her shopping, the family would head up to the roof. The air smelled strongly of cheap, delicious yakisoba cooking on an iron grill, mixed with the metallic scent of coin-operated rides. There were small mechanical pandas that you could ride for just 100 yen, moving at a remarkably slow pace while playing a repetitive electronic melody. We would throw coins into tiny arcade machines or ride the miniature train that circled the perimeter of the roof, looking out over the expanding city skyline. Today, with massive, high-tech theme parks everywhere, the idea of being thrilled by a slow, rusty mechanical panda on a concrete roof seems almost absurdly simple. But to us, it was pure magic. It was a special family event, a small, affordable reward that made a regular Sunday afternoon feel like a magnificent holiday. Let us return to the classroom and remember an aspect of our education that would be completely scandalous today: the immense physical authority of our teachers. It was not uncommon for a strict teacher to walk through the aisles carrying a wooden bamboo sword known as a shinai. If we misbehaved, forgot our homework, or spoke out of turn, physical discipline was swiftly administered. The sharp thwack of bamboo hitting a wooden desk, or sometimes hitting us, echoed through the chalk-dusty air of the classroom. We lived in genuine fear of the most strict teachers, yet, strangely, we also held them in profound respect. The entire neighborhood supported this. If you complained to your parents that the teacher hit you, your parents would likely scold you again for causing trouble. Today, this level of corporal punishment in schools is absolutely illegal and would be headline news. Modern society views it as totally absurd. However, we grew up feeling that the entire village was raising us, for better or worse. We learned discipline and boundaries in a very direct, physical way that shaped the resilience of our entire generation. Let us think about an everyday experience that required a surprising amount of physical endurance. Using the traditional floor-level squat toilets, known as the washiki. In the 1970s, Western-style seated toilets were a rare luxury. Instead, public restrooms and most homes featured these ceramic basins set into the floor. The first thing you would notice was the intense, overwhelming smell of the blue camphor balls, placed there to mask the odors. The tiles were usually cold and damp, and you had to carefully balance yourself, terrified of dropping your coins or your keys down into the dark abyss below. It required strong legs and good balance, especially on a moving train. Today, with our heated electronic toilet seats that play soothing music and wash you with warm water, The physical effort and the sharp chemical smell of the old washiki seem primitive and absurd. Younger generations simply do not know how to use them. But those cold, tiled rooms are etched perfectly into our memories, reminding us of a time when everyday life required just a little more effort and we simply accepted it as the natural way of the world. Let us step out onto the rainy evening streets and look for the local delivery boy. Before modern smartphone applications and insulated backpacks, food delivery was an incredible balancing act known as demay. You would see a young man riding a heavy iron bicycle with one hand, while his other hand balanced a towering, impossible stack of wooden boxes filled with hot bowls of soba or ramen. Sometimes, there would be 15 or 20 ceramic bowls stacked on a single shoulder. The smell of rich, savory dashi broth trailed behind him in the cool evening air. When you finished eating your hot noodles, you did not throw the containers away. You simply left the dirty ceramic bowls sitting right outside your front door on the street. The delivery boy would swing by later in the night to collect them. Today, balancing open bowls of hot soup on a bicycle in the rain seems incredibly absurd and a violation of every modern health and safety code. Furthermore, leaving dishes outside your door, relying on the absolute trust that nobody would steal or break them, is a testament to the beautiful, unspoken honesty that defined our neighborhoods back then. Let us turn our minds to a summer evening ritual that filled our homes with a very specific, unforgettable scent. I am talking about the deep green spirals of the mosquito coils, the Katori Senko. In the 1970s, air conditioning was a rare luxury. Instead, we opened all our sliding doors, welcoming the humid night breeze, and lit the tip of the coil. The smell was earthy, slightly sweet, and thick with the essence of summer. You would place it in a small, pig-shaped ceramic holder and watch the thin ribbon of white smoke curl up toward the ceiling. We would lay out our futons on the cool tatami mats, listening to the gentle ringing of the glass wind chime hanging by the porch. Today, people rely on chemical sprays or silent electric plug-ins, completely sealing their homes behind double-glazed glass to escape the heat. The idea of purposely filling your bedroom with thick smoke while sleeping, with the doors completely open, seems absurd. But back then, the ritual of lighting the coil was our way of making peace with nature. We found a quiet kind of harmony in that fragrant smoke, a memory that still brings comfort to our hearts. Let us remember the quiet footsteps that arrived before the sun came up, the delivery of the morning milk. Outside nearly every front door, attached to the wall, was a small wooden box bearing the faded logo of a dairy company. Early in the morning, while the sky was still a pale purple, you would hear the soft clinking of thick glass bottles as the milkman made his rounds. When you opened the wooden box, the cold glass was covered in condensation. The milk was sealed with a thick paper cap that you had to pry off with a special little needle or your fingernails. If you were lucky, the thickest, richest cream had risen to the very top, and taking that first sip was pure heaven. When you were done, you simply washed the glass bottle and put it back in the wooden box for the milkman to collect the next day. Today, buying milk involves plastic jugs from heavily refrigerated supermarket aisles, and the idea of leaving fresh dairy sitting in a wooden box on your porch seems absurdly unsanitary. But that daily delivery was a quiet promise, a reliable rhythm of life that connected our homes to the outside world before we even woke up. Let us think about the desperate measures we took just to watch our favorite television shows. In those days, television signals were captured by large, complex metal antennas strapped to the roof of the house. Inevitably, during a strong typhoon or a windy afternoon, the antenna would shift, and the television screen would dissolve into a sea of hissing black and white static. The solution was terrifying by today's standards. The father of the house would actually climb up onto the slippery, slanted roof in the middle of the storm. He would physically twist the metal antenna while shouting down to the open window, asking if the picture was clear yet. The children would sit by the glowing television set, yelling back whether the static was getting better or worse. Today, risking your life on a wet roof just to watch a Sunday evening comedy broadcast seems absolutely absurd. We now have perfect digital streams that never waver. But that struggle, that frantic shouting between the roof and the living room, was a hilarious, shared family crisis that made finally sitting down together to watch the program feel like a hard-won victory. Let us travel to the morning rush hour and witness a spectacle of human endurance that was uniquely ours. Boarding the commuter trains in the 1970s was not just crowded, it was a physical battle. When the train doors opened, the cars were already packed tight. But we did not wait for the next one. Instead, the station staff, known as the oshiya, or pushers, would spring into action. Wearing their crisp uniforms and immaculate white gloves, they would place their hands on our backs and physically shove us into the train car with all their might. You would be pressed so tightly against strangers that your feet might temporarily leave the floor. The air smelled of damp wool, sweat, and strong hair pomade. You could not even lift your arms to read a newspaper. Today, paying professionals to violently compress human beings into a metal tube seems like an absurd violation of personal space and safety. Modern commuters would be absolutely horrified. Yet, we endured this intense physical crush in complete, polite silence, united by the shared, unspoken determination to rebuild our nation and arrive at our offices on time. Let us grab our wooden buckets and walk down the evening streets to a place of immense warmth and community, the local sento, or public bathhouse. In those decades, many houses still did not have their own private baths, so the entire neighborhood would gather at the sento. You would pass through the hanging curtains and be greeted by the overwhelming heat and the echoing sound of water splashing against cold ceramic tiles. The walls always featured a grand, sweeping painted mural of Mount Fuji. We bathed completely naked among our neighbors, our teachers, and the local shop owners. The air smelled strongly of soap and damp wood. After soaking in the incredibly hot water until your skin turned bright red, the absolute best part was standing in the changing room with a hand on your hip, drinking an ice-cold bottle of fruit milk or coffee milk. Today, the idea of stripping naked and bathing with your entire neighborhood seems absurdly invasive to younger people who value ultimate privacy. But the sento stripped away all social classes and pretenses. It was the truest form of community, where we were all completely equal. Let us remember how we spent our afternoons playing outside, completely unsupervised and surrounded by hidden dangers. In the 1970s, many of our residential streets were lined with deep, open, concrete drainage ditches known as dobu. These ditches carried rainwater and sewage, and there were rarely any fences or covers protecting us from them. Yet, they were our favorite playgrounds. We would run barefoot along the concrete edges, completely ignoring the sharp stones, leaning over the dark, damp-smelling water to catch crayfish or rescue a lost rubber ball. Scraped knees and muddy clothes were just the uniform of childhood. The smell of the damp earth and algae was a constant companion. Today, having deep, uncovered drainage ditches lining the streets where children play is considered incredibly absurd and a massive municipal liability. But growing up alongside those hazards taught us how to navigate the world carefully. We learned our own physical limits not through padded playgrounds, but through the real, raw environment of our rapidly modernizing neighborhoods. Let us listen closely for the sound that told us our day of freedom was coming to an end. We would leave the house early in the morning and wander for miles, far out of sight from our parents. We had no mobile phones, no tracking devices, and no way to be reached. We were completely, wonderfully free. The only rule was that we had to return home when the 5 o'clock chime played. As the late afternoon sun cast long golden shadows across the streets, the local loudspeakers would suddenly crackle to life. The melancholic, beautiful melody of Yuyake Koyake would echo over the rooftops. That song, mixed with the smell of dinner cooking from the neighborhood exhaust fans, was our universal signal. We would jump on our bicycles and race the setting sun back to our front doors. Today, allowing children to wander miles away for 12 hours with absolutely zero communication seems like an absurd fantasy. Modern parents would be paralyzed with worry. But back then, the 5 o'clock chime was the only tether we needed, a gentle musical reminder that we belonged to a home that was waiting for us. Let us think about the incredible patience we had when it came to the music we loved. Before instant digital streaming, we relied on physical cassette tapes. We would spend hours hovering by the radio, pressing the heavy plastic record and play buttons at the exact same time, trying desperately to capture our favorite songs without recording the voice of the announcer. The smell of warm electronics and plastic filled the room. But sometimes, disaster struck. The player would eat the tape, pulling the delicate brown magnetic ribbon out into a tangled mess. We did not throw it away. Instead, we would carefully pull the tape out, insert a hexagonal wooden pencil into the plastic reel, and slowly, painstakingly, wind the ribbon back into place by hand. The physical, tactile sensation of turning that pencil, hoping the music was not ruined, is something we will never forget. Today, the idea of spending 20 minutes manually winding a fiery ribbon just to hear a song with terrible audio quality seems entirely absurd. But that physical labor made the music incredibly precious. We earned every single note we listened to. Finally, let us remember a sound that brought the deepest sense of peace to our freezing winter nights. As you lay perfectly still beneath the heavy blankets, the streets outside would be completely silent. Then, you would hear it. The sharp, resonant clack, clack of wooden blocks echoing through the dark. It was the Yomawari, the neighborhood fire watchman, walking his lonely patrol. He would strike his wooden blocks, the hyoshigi, and call out in a long, drawn-out voice, warning everyone to be careful with their fires. The sound was incredibly loud in the dead of winter, yet it never woke us in anger. Instead, it was a profound comfort. You knew that out there in the freezing cold, an elder from your community was walking the streets, keeping a watchful eye over your sleeping family. Today, the idea of an old man walking through a modern city, loudly clapping wooden sticks together at midnight, seems absurd. People would likely complain about the noise, but back then, that simple, rhythmic clacking was the heartbeat of a community that truly cared for one another. It was the sound of absolute safety. When we look back at all these absurd, vanished details of our past, we realize something profound. We do not just miss the heavy red telephones, the thick cash envelopes, or the wooden milk boxes. What we truly miss is the way those things forced us to interact with each other. We miss the patience, the trust, and the tangible feeling of being deeply connected to our neighbors and our surroundings. The world may have become faster, cleaner, and undeniably safer, but the warmth of those simpler days remains locked forever in our hearts. Thank you so much for taking this journey back in time with me today. If these memories brought a smile to your face, please consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like on this video. It truly helps us keep this history alive. Now, I want to ask you a question. Which of these 20 memories brought back the strongest feeling for you? Or is there another vanished ritual from your youth that you miss dearly? Please, share your personal stories in the comments below. I will be reading every single one.